Greetings to one and all who have joined the live stream. Today we are gathered here for the sixth and the concluding expert talk of this lecture series in Dr. A.K. Singh Literary Club, which is organized by Department of English, Bhakta Kavi Narsimha Mehta University, Junagadh. The Literary Club was inaugurated by the department on 19th March 2025 in the loving memory of late Dr. Avdesh Kumar Singh sir. It was done in the esteemed presence of Dr. A.K. Singh's wife, Dr. Kiran Singh Madam, who is also the advisor of Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, Oro University, Surat. Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Atul H. Bapodra sir, Dr. Ravi Jhala sir from Saurashtra University, and Professor Dr. Firoz Sheikh sir were also present in this inaugural. My name is Varun Pandya, currently a research scholar at Department of English, Bhakti Kavi Narsimha Mehta University. I gladly welcome you all in today's session. Let me introduce you all to our today's expert, Miss Disha Chhatbar ma'am. Disha ma'am is currently serving as teaching assistant at Department of English, Bhakti Kavi Narsimha Mehta University, Junagadh. If one talks about her academic details, then in a very small span of her academical career, she has achieved a lot of success. Disha ma'am has cracked NET examination thrice, GATE examination twice, and GSET. By gaining these qualifications, she has projected herself as a beacon of compatibility and aspiring knowledge in the field of academic. Disha ma'am also has six publications accredited to her academic profile. Along with these things, she also has 2 years of pedagogical experience. Currently, she is pursuing PhD from the Department of English, Saurashtra University. Her areas of expertise are ecocriticism, literary theory, and poetry. Disha ma'am is going to shed light on the realms of ecocriticism. Ma'am, I am handing over this session to you and request you to please enlighten us with your profound knowledge. Ma'am.
Okay, I hope I am audible. Okay, so first of all, I would like to, um, first of all, I would like to thanks Varun for this wonderful welcome, and I would like to show my gratitude towards Professor A.K. Singh sir, because of whom the Department of English and CLS has been established, and he is the one who has shaped the people from whom we have got the guidance, and the people who have actually the insight to carry forward the legacy that Professor A.K. Singh sir had. Today, I am going to talk about the field of eco-criticism, and this is the field about which already one of our faculties have already talked about. But it is a bit differentiation because we are going to see the reasons behind the environmental problems and why there has been emergence of the environmental criticism and for understanding the application of eco-criticism, we are going to look at specifically the poetry from American literature, and then we are also going to see some of the indigenous aspects related to it. So, I hope my screen is visible right now. Hello. Is my screen visible? Okay, fine. So, if we first try to understand the etymology of eco-criticism, then it is a combination of two words. One is oikos and another is kritis. And when we say the oikos means the household, it is entire earth which is considered to be the household because it is the place which provides the living shelter for all the creatures. And the word kritis means to judge. And when we judge something, we try to talk about the positive and negative aspects of something, and we also try to make suggestions about how can we make something better. So this is exactly what eco-criticism does. It tries to show us what is right and what is wrong with our household, that is nature, and what can we do to make it better. And it also tries to make some suggestions. And it is because of this that eco-criticism is also called a corrective field. Then, in this context, we can also try to talk about the understanding of eco-criticism as given by Lyotard. He has said that eco-criticism is a discourse of secluded. Then why he is saying that it is the discourse of secluded? Because generally the matter of the household, which is related to the condition of children and women, these are the matters hidden from the outside world. These are the matter not discussed in the outside world. And the similar goes for the concern for nature, like it has been hidden from the public concern throughout this time. And because eco-criticism is trying to talk about these aspects, it is said that it is the discourse of secluded. Then, to understand what eco-criticism does in the field of literature, we can take the help of the definition given by Greg Gerhardt. And as he has said, eco-criticism is the study of relationship of human and the non-human throughout human cultural history, and entailing critical analysis of the term human itself. Now, we should consider the word human cultural history here, because it does not study only the text, but throughout the time, how culture has shaped the understanding of human and non human, that is the concern of eco criticism. And then it also tries to understand how the term human is constructed. And it is because of this social cultural aspect that the term human is constructed, and because of how we are defining humans in relation to other non humans, that is shaping our relation with nature. So what are these cultural aspects that has affected the human understanding about themselves and about non-human? Then we can talk about these various aspects that has added into our understanding of being in the world. And in that, the first thing we know that initially the human and non-human shared a harmonious relationship. Then there has come different changes which have added into our separation from the nature. Otherwise, initially we were part of what we called nature. Then the first shift that has come, it has occurred in the 7th century. Initially, human beings were dependent on nature for all their needs, and farm used to be small, and it was only the use of 2 oxen which was required to till the land. And afterwards, there came the technology in which there were the need of 8 oxen, and instead of growing only what is required by the family, there came the time where people started growing more, because now the people have come together, because not a single family can have 8 oxen together. People started coming together and the farm's size started increasing, and because of it, it happened that initially only what was required by the family was grown up on the land. And now what is happening is people are getting the proportion of the food that is produced in accordance with the proportion of the oxen they have provided. So now the focus is on growing more. So somewhere we can find that the human beings started developing the desire to have more from the land. Then it has increased because of several religious and philosophical aspect as well, because we know that Christianity has said that human beings are constructed in the image of God. So they started believing that they have the power over the earth. And it is also one of the commands in Christianity that God has told them to establish their dominion over the earth. Because of these reasons, human beings started feeling that they are the owner of this earth. And to this, again, we can find the scientific advancements which have added into this aspect. Like Francis Bacon has said that we need to know the laws of nature so that we can use it according to our needs. Then it is also the idea of John Locke, which has added into our dominion over the earth, because he said that we can have the ownership of the natural resources resources by adding our labor into it. So again, we can find that instead of a having a companionship with nature, human beings started having their dominion over it. Then again, we can find that Charles Darwin has said that human beings are the most evolved beings. So, because of it, they started feeling that they are the crown of creation, and then they were also separated from other non humans because of the idea that they are having the thinking capacity that separates them from the rest of the creatures. Like the idea given by Rene Descartes when he said that I think that therefore I am. This actually separated human beings from the non human. To all these aspects, at the end, when we talk about the modern technology, it has also added into feeling ourselves as the master of the natural resources. Because, as Martin Heidegger has said, in the modern technological time, the natural resources have become standing reserve for us because we are no more dependent now on the wind energy to travel by the sea. Instead of that, we can use other energies that can help us in traveling. So natural resources are no more something that we require, that we require, and because of which we have to maintain our schedule according to that. Instead of that, now human beings are utilizing whatever is there for them as a standing reason. All these things have shaped our understanding about ourselves in this world, and then have added to our separation from the natural resources or from other non humans. And we have come to the time that this separation has actually led to the destruction of the world we are living in. And one of those destruction, as we know, that is related to the Second World War. And it is because of this Second World War that human beings have also become aware about their environment. And if we try to see from where the awareness for the environment has come, then it is also related to the Second World War. It was on the 16th July 1945 that the first atomic bomb was used by Oppenheimer and the team. And as we know that it is the second and the third bomb which they have used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After this, human beings realized that they are well capable of destroying themselves. They are actually playing the role of Satan when they are on the earth. And because of it, they did a small experiment in the Marshall Island. And in summer 1946, they did this experiment by using fourth and fifth atomic bomb that they had to see the impact of the atomic energy on the environment. And initially, they had expected more disastrous results, which they did not get by this experiment. But when the team of biologists was sent there, they could find that the residual radioactive remained in the food chain at least for the 5 years. So even though there was not visible destruction happening all around when this experiment was done, the impact of the energy was actually the residual impact, and it had affected the food chain. And as we know that if one of the elements of the food chain is affected, the entire chain can be affected because of it. So this was this was the time from where the environmental awareness started getting increased. And this was also entering into the field of literature when the books like Silent Spring was published. As it was already mentioned in the other lecture too, that Silent Spring begins with the lines taken from the poem by Keats, which is La Bella Damson's Mercy. Reading that, we can assume that the text might have some supernatural element. But as it is said, whatever happened in the place, that there was decrease in the number of the birds, there was the impact of pesticides on the land. All these things were not created by any supernatural element, but it was humans themselves who have done it. And it is written in the text that no witchcraft, no enemy action had silenced the birth of new life in this stricken world. The people had done it themselves. And when the Silent Spring was published, it is the article in the New York Times, which said that Silent Spring is now the noisy summer. It actually raised the voice of the people who said that Rachel Carson had actually ignored the positive aspect of the use of the pesticides. Even though they had criticized the book for this, any they did not have any proof to show whatever Carson has said is wrong. And if we try to look at it from the aspect of literature, then it is the use of pastoral and apocalyptic mode of writing which Rachel Carson has used in this text. Afterwards, in 1970, there was the first Earth Day, which was celebrated, and in that, most of the speakers talked about talked about the conservation of the environment. And as it is said, and you can see it in the slide as well, most Earth Day speakers called on public to drive less, conserve more, and question automobiles, to question the life that was based on more consumption of oil and other natural resources, on promoting private wealth and national prestige as the highest social goals. Now, these are the issues which were discussed in 1970, but later on, we can find these issues being taken into consideration in the field of environmentalism, that talks about the the small steps which people can take to conserve the environment, which includes the aspect of 3R, which is reduce, recycle, and reuse. And then it is also found in the idea of deep ecology, which talks about utilizing the natural resources only when human beings need to fulfill their vital needs. Otherwise, it says that human beings do not have right to lessen the lessen the versatility that nature has. So these ideas are later on taken into consideration in the field of literature and the environmental movements as well. Then in the literature we find the establishment of Association for the Study of Literature and Environment in 1992, which has the journal called Interdisciplinary Study in Literature and Environment. It publishes the articles and the creative writing related to environment. Now, as we have seen till now, there are different areas in which people have been talking about environment, like it is students who are protesting for the environment, it is also the books which are being published. We can understand that it is somewhere the field which requires the scientific understanding. And initially, the environmentalist had also been the botanist themselves in their profession. Then the question comes, what about the use of literature in the field of environment? To understand where can literature or where can eco-criticism be useful, we can take the distinction given by John Passmore about problems in ecology and ecological problems into consideration. He has said that the problems in ecology is a scientific issue, and it requires the the work in the lab and all the scientific stuff which is required to understand any problem in the environment, while ecological problems are the problems which are more social, the problems which are there in the environment, and it has some social or cultural reasons behind them. So it is the concern with ecological problem with which ecocriticism deals. So now the question comes, how can we study any text by using the theory of ecocriticism when we are trying to trace the issue of these ecological problems in any text? For that, this book called Theory into Practice can be useful, and in that there is one chapter in ecocriticism which talks about three areas in which the study in ecocriticism can be done, three ways in which we can study ecocriticism. It talks about the essay by Cheryl Lotfelty, and she has talked about three ways of studying ecocriticism, which parallels the way of study of feminism. Like in feminism, initially it is the representation of women, then the it is the writing about the women who are less known in the field of feminism, and then about the construction of gender and sexuality in literature. These are the three stages in which we can study the literature that has nature into it. Then one of these ways is study of representation. For that, there are certain questions that we can ask to any text, and we can try to understand how nature is represented in any text. Here I have taken the poem by Emerson, which is the Rhodora. It is a kind of flower, and if we read the poem, we can understand that poet is very much mesmerized by looking at the flower. What he says is, in May, when sea winds pierced our solitude, I found the fresh rhodora in the woods, spreading its leafless blooms in the damp nook to please the desert and the sluggish brook. Okay, if you try to focus, then it is in the second line that poet is mentioning the persona, that is I, and we can assume that it is the poet himself. And then we can see that throughout the poem, poet is not talking about himself anywhere. It is just towards the end, in the last third line, that he is mentioning I again. And it is just thrice that we find the persona being mentioned. Otherwise, entire poem is more about nature. So we can see that nature is actually at the center of its discussion. Plus, the poet is not only focused about the impact of rhodora flowers on him. We can also see that he has found rhodora in its natural place, which is the woods. So we can understand that nature stays at the center of the poem. Plus, it is looking at the rhodora flower that has given birth to this poem. And without that incident, we can assume that the poem might not have existed. So we can also say that it is nature which plays important role in the poem. Then to understand how is nature represented, then we can see that it is the pleasant aspect of nature which poet is presenting. Like it has the power to please the desert and the sluggish brook, usually the sight which do not please anyone. The flower can also please those sights. Then the poet is also saying that the feathers of the bird can also feel like something that is cheap in front of the glory that the flower is having. Then again, we can find this line that this charm is vested on the earth and sky. Again, we can find that poet is talking about something pleasant, something beautiful that is there about nature. So that is the representation of nature in this poem. And again, if we try to understand what is the impact of nature on the poet, then we can understand that the poet has come to the understanding of his ignorance and about the realization that the same thing which has made him also made the flower. As towards the end, he is saying, but in my simple ignorance, I suppose the self-same power that brought me there brought you. So that is the realization about the oneness of human and nature, that they are having the same origin, that is provided to the poet when he has encountered the beauty of this flower. Then if we try to see what are the other questions that we may encounter when we are understanding the poem, for that we can take another example of the poem by Thoreau, which is nature. And in the beginning itself, we can see that poet is humbling down towards the existence of nature, and he is accepting, or rather he is desirous to have the lower position in front of nature. When it is said that, "O nature, I do not aspire to be in the highest, to be the highest in thy choir, to be a meteor in the sky or comet that may range on high, only a zephyr that may blow among the reeds by the river low." So when we were looking at the ideas given by the philosophers, it was like that human beings are at the highest position. But now, if we see, we can understand that poet is actually taking the lower position in front of nature. And what he is saying is that he does not want to be highest. He does not want the position, something that is high, that is in the sky, but what he wants is the position that is at the river, that is very low. So again, we can find that poet does not agree with the aspect that we are superior to nature. Then, if we try to see that whether the poem brings attention to the persona or to the nature, even though the poet is mentioning himself more in the poem, if we compare it with the last poem that we have seen, still the focus is on nature. And we can see it from the beginning itself. Otherwise, we can also find it where the poet says that he wants to be the child and the pupil of the nature, and he is even ready to become the sovereign slave of it. Then towards the end also we find that he is saying that he would like to have one moment in thy dawn, then share the city's year forlorn. So the comparison, if you see, instead of spending entire year in the city, which is having the which is having that alienation, because he's saying that he would be lonely, he would be forlorn in the city. So instead of that 1 year, what he is focusing is just a single moment that he can have in the companionship of nature. So again, we can understand that the poet is bringing nature into center. Then another way of looking into the nature writing is trying to understand the work that is not so much famous for the representation of nature. I have taken here, for example, the poem written by Stopping by Woods on the Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. It is a poem which is very well known, that we know specifically for the last four lines, which are: the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Now, even though this poem is famous for these lines, we can understand that people have known this poem more because of these four lines, which is somewhere centered on the human philosophy, that is related to the philosophy of our life. But then, what about the representation of nature in this poem? Like the the writer of this book itself talks about the natural elements in this poem, and um, she tries to explain that poet is escaping into the nature, and he is willing to be in the woods because the city cannot provide him the ease. There is no sound in the woods, there is no one around. It is the solitude which the person cannot find in the city, and that is why he is preferring to be in the woods. Besides this, if you try to see other lines of the poem, then too we can understand that the poem is suggesting that oneness with nature. Because if you see that second stanza, it is said, "My little horse must think it queer." If we think about the idea given by Rene Descartes, he has separated human beings on the basis of their thinking capacity. And it is said that animals do not have the thinking capacity. But here, that thinking is becoming possible. And then it is not just thinking by the horse, but it is the communication which is possible between the human and the non human, even though the language is not possessed by the animals. And it is said that he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. So again, the poet could also understand what the horse is trying to convey. So here again, we can see that there is some relation between human and non-human, which is presented in the poem. So if we try to answer these three questions, why is this text not widely known in the for its depiction of nature? Then I think that it is majorly because of the focus on the last four lines, which have become so famous, which are often quoted by people who are giving their speech and all. It is because of this philosophical aspect, which is more focused by everyone, that we do not find the significant discussion about the representation of nature in this poem. Then the another question is, does the poem raise question about nature and environment that readers should be concerned with? Then initially if we read the poem, there is not direct question which is raised, but if we try to see what is not told in the poem, then from the interpretation that poet is actually taking shelter in the woods because it is not there in the city, then it actually raises question about our life which is led in the city or which is led in the area that is not so rural or that is not in the wilderness. It raises question about finding peace over there. And the last question, what is the stance what is the stance of the narrator towards nature, and why should readers be aware of it? Then in this poem we can see that poet is actually poet is actually trying to be in nature, and he is actually going away from that city life. So we need to be aware about this because we need to realize what is missing in our day to day life. That is why I think that this poem has that capacity of representing nature and has the capacity to raise question about the life we are actually leading, which is away from nature. Then the third way is examining ecological issues and the questions. Now, till now, the poets we have seen belonged to 19th and 20th century, and somewhere they have been writing about nature in the way of the romantic poets. But then this with the writers like Mary Oliver and Wendelberry, we can see that there has come shift in the topics that they are dealing with, because um, in the writings of Thoreau and Emerson, Robert Frost, we find that they are showing the pleasant aspect of nature, philosophical aspect of nature, and still nature remains at the center of their poem. But when we enter into the latter part of the 20th century and 21st century, we can find that writers have started talking about the city life as well. Like in Robert Frost's poem, he is not mentioning anything about the city life, but it is just a suggested thing. But if we read the poem by Mary Oliver and Mendelberry, we find that they are directly expressing their dislike for the development, their dislike for the life led in the city. And still, they have maintained their eco-critical stance, and still they are taking shelter into nature. And the the poem I have taken here is Extending the Airport Runway by Mary Oliver. And if you see, you can also find the political aspect connected with the aspect of development in this poem, because the poet is actually against the development that is happening in the city. As she says, the good citizens of commission cast their votes for more of everything. Very early in the morning, I go out to the pale duns to look over the empty spaces of the wilderness. So there is the contrast which is presented over here, the good citizens of the commission. And again, we can understand that when she is saying good citizen, it is in the ironic or in the satiric manner that she is talking about it. And she says that they are giving their votes for more of everything. And when we are getting more from the nature, what we are doing is we are destroying it, we are exploiting it. And in opposition to this, the poet is giving the opinion that she is having, the preference that she is having. What she is doing is she is going outside in the empty space where the wilderness is there. And she says that she can see there's something which the people who are in this commission cannot see. And if you see towards the end, she is saying whatever it is, formless yet palpable, very shining, very delicate, very rare. So from this again, you can understand that this wilderness has become very rare. Plus, it is something delicate. If you are you are working with it, there are chances that it would be affected. And that is why it is said that nature is not something constant, it also changes. And again, it raises the question about our dealing with nature. If we try to see the questions that we can ask to the text to understand whether it is raising an ecological question or not, the one is, are the values expressed in a given literary work consistent with ecological wisdom? Okay. To understand this, first we have to understand that the poet is against this idea of more of everything. So, the aspect of being content with whatever we are having. This is again connected with the aspect of having harmony with nature, because if we are we are content with whatever we have, we would not exploit the nature. And then the poet is also against the development of this airport runway which is happening, because it destroys the wilderness. The poet is against it. So yes, we can say that the values expressed are having ecological wisdom. And then another is, in what ways and to what effect is the environmental crisis seeping into the contemporary literature and popular culture? Okay, if you try to see the the other poems that we have discussed, they are more pleasant. They do not talk about the environmental crisis directly. But here we can find that poet is directly mentioning something which is destroying nature. And this is the shift that happens because of the shift in the time. Because in the in the latter part of the 20th century, 21st century, the use of automobiles have increased. The writing of the poet is also changed, but still we can find that poet is taking shelter into nature. She is still more concerned about the condition of nature in the wilderness. So this idea of taking shelter into nature, this pastoral idea of running away from the society into nature, is consistent in the American writing, and you can find it even being reflected into different novels as well. Then, if we take the another poem, which is by Wendell the same opposition to the automobiles can be found, and the same idea about um, about the exploitative mentality of the human beings is reflected in this poem too. As it says, I live behind even my walking stick. My knife is in my pocket, but that I have forgot. I bring no car, no cell phone, no computer, no camera, no CD player, no fax, no TV, not even a book. I go into the woods. I sit on stupidity only humans are capable of, but as ever itself, free, a bargain, get it while it lasts. Very simple poem if you see the words of the poem, but from the beginning we can see the opposition towards something that is cultural. Even the poet is not bringing the walking stick with him. Otherwise, stick comes from the nature. But because it is the walking stick, it is something on which some work by human is done. So he is not even bringing that. He is the knife, but he has forgotten. He is not even considering that he is having knife with him. And then all these automobiles and all this modern technology we are using is being mentioned. And towards the end, he is saying that not even a book, he is not even bringing book with him, because again it is something which comes from nature but on which some human work is done. And then he is going into the woods, and there you find how he is actually commenting on the human acts, even though he is talking about nature only, because it is said that I sit on a log provided at no cost. So in this there is suggestion that if it would be the human society, there would be the cost for sitting on the log too. And the poet has actually come to the earth where he does not require to pay something here. And again he is commenting on this destruction of nature by human beings when he is saying that sadly abused by the stupidity of humans. Till now, we have seen that humans are cold intellectual. It is the thinking capacity that they are given. But poet is considering them stupid because of the abuses that they have added into nature. And then towards when it is said free a bargain get it while it lasts. So again it is something that you are getting to be in nature free. But here also there is suggestion that we have to be at our own only. We do not need to have all these things with us when we are there in nature. And the poet is saying get it while it lasts. So there is also a suggestion that there may come time where this wilderness is no more available. Nature is something which is eternal, which is going to sustain, but it may happen that human beings have destroyed it and we may not have encounter with the wildness anymore. So again, we can see that the way of writing the poem is different than the other writers we have already seen. But it projects about the environmental destruction directly. It is more direct way than than the romantic poets, and still we find that nature is a place of solace for the poet, and it has that capacity to heal. Then, besides this three way of understanding any text from eco-critical perspective, there are also other four ways which are suggested by Lawrence View. He has given four criteria to understand whether any text is eco-critical or not. And if we try to understand them, one is non-human environment is present not merely as a framing device, but as a presence that begins to suggest that human history is implicated in natural history. So try to understand these into parts. First thing is that the environment is not merely as a framing device. It is not just as a background that environment is present in the poem or in a literary text, but it is playing an active role in the in the text, and it is the human history implicated into natural history, meaning that whatever is happening in nature has the impact on human beings. For this, you can take again the example of the poem by Robert Frost, in which we find that poet is passing from the woods and it is actually having impact on him. It is leading him to the understanding that this is the place where he would like to be. So nature is actually having impact on the human beings. It is not just there as a background to please us. Then another is the human interest is not understood to be the only legitimate interest. Like, it is again connected with the idea of deep ecology, that it is not only the human interest. Again, you can go back to the poem by Mary Oliver, which talks about the development. And that development, if we see from the aspect of from the aspect of economy, then that can be useful. That we can actually call the development of that infrastructure. But we should also understand that it is not something good for the nature or the other creatures that they are there. So it is not just the human interest which is important in the poem, but the interest of other creatures is also taken into account. If that happens in any text, then we can say that the text is eco-critical. Then the third aspect is human accountability to environment is part of text ethical orientation. Whatever humans are doing, they are accountable for it. They are responsible for their acts. And again, the statement itself is self-sufficient to make us understand that we need to be responsible for whatever we are doing. And it is mainly because of for two reasons that human beings do not realize the impact of whatever they are doing with the environment. It is because whatever they do does not have the direct results in a very small period of time. Whatever happens long after, it is after generations that the impact of today's act would be visible. Because of this, they have somewhere misunderstood their act as having no impact on the environment. Plus, it is also because whatever is happening in the city does not have impact on the city, but it is having more impact on the village. So whatever is happening is distant in time and place from the person who is involved in any kind of act. It is because of these reasons that human beings have somewhere forgotten that they are accountable for whatever they are doing. Then the fourth aspect is some sense of environment as a process rather than as a constant is at least implicit in the text. Okay, it can happen that it is not directly told in the poem, but it is implicit. The meaning is somewhere hidden. And what is the meaning that is hidden? That environment is the process and not it is not that it is something constant. Now the constant is not related to unending here. Okay, it is not related to the aspect of being immortal. The constant is something that remains there without any change. So we cannot expect that whatever we are doing would not have any impact on the nature. Nature is not something constant. It is something which would be affected by the human deeds. And that is why it is necessary that we see the environment as a process rather than as something that is constant. If any text helps us understand environment in any of these four ways, according to Lawrence Buell, we can say that it is an eco-critical text. Now, after considering these ideas, which are mainly taken from this European world, which is more Occidental, we can come to the Indian perspective on nature. And as we know that our Indian perspective has always had that aspect of oneness of nature. We belong to nature. That is the idea that we have. And again, if we try to see that through the aspect of religion, then we have always seen nature as something to be worshipped. And it is the pagan belief which used to exist. And we also find some beliefs in our religion which are related to the conservation of environment. Like we have the birds and the animals which are vehicles for our gods. Now, this connection with the God has helped us not to destroy them. We have been worshipping several plants, several trees, and that has also helped us to have a kind of reverence towards them. So, it is the religion based conservation of the environment that is at the root of our upbringing. And then we also find that it has actually crossed the aspect of religion and has led to have some kind of spiritual connection with nature. To understand this, you can take the examples of the texts like Akupar. And in one of the incidents, we find that Aima is having a problem with the weeds that are growing in the forest of Gir. In that, it is said that because people are not following the advice given by the goddess, which is Utpatti Ava, following the uh, because they are not following the advice, it is the growing of the weeds that is increasing in the forest. And as we know that if weeds are there, there cannot be the growth of other plants. And weeds are something which cannot be used for food by human beings or by the animals. So if we try to see, this growing of the weed is something related to the science as well, but it is it is connected with religion. It is connected with the worshipping of the god, and because of it, it is something which is not pleasant for Ainu. So again, here religion has been the base which is actually helping us to avoid or to try to understand the problem that is there in environment. Then another work is by Amitav Ghosh, which is titled Jungle Nama. The book talk about the forest that is there in the West Bengal, and it is taken from the myth of Bonbib. And if you read the text, you find that it is the criticism for the exploitative aspect that human being is having for nature, and it is the goddess born baby who is worshipped by these people and who is protecting the forest from this kind of people. And because of this fear of born baby, people are actually afraid to enter the forest, and in that way again we find that connecting nature with religion is helping us to protect the nature that we are gifted with. And then if we try to have he is proposing. And then he also talks about different symbols that our religion is having, different symbols that different religion has, including Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. And he talks about how this religion is also helping us to understand nature in some symbolic way, and how it is actually proposing to have the harmonious relationship not just with nature but with the society and with our own self as well. Then, as it was already being mentioned, it is not just in the theory that India is having the environmental awareness, it is also in the practice that it is there. And as Mukherjee sir was already mentioning, that that the Chipko movement is taken note at the international level. The same thing has happened again in the case of the Apiko movement. The Chipko movement is the movement from the Uttarakhand, and Apiko movement is the movement from Karnataka. And these movements have happened in a very close period. Like, it is Chipko movement that happened in 1970s, and we find in 1983 the echo of the Chipko movement helping the people of Karnataka to have the Apiko movement. And in that movement too, we find that people actually hug the trees to protect them from being cutting, and they even tied rakhi to the trees, showing their love for nature and their willingness to protect it. And again, these two movements are also taken note by the by the writer who is living in Africa, who is Wangari Maathai, and she has talked about it in her book The World We Once Lived In. So we can find that it is the closer relationship with nature that is that has been more prominent in the Indian philosophy or in the religions that we have. So thank you. I hope things are clear to you.
Thank you very much, Disha ma'am, for such an insightful session. You have precisely elaborated various aspects of eco-criticism and have also blended them with American poetry as well as Indian movements and texts. Your knowledge in the field of eco-criticism has truly left a prolific impression on us, and it has also inspired young minds with various spectrums of this field. I'm sure everyone here has obtained new perspective to evaluate eco-criticism from your views. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, it is time for question answer session. If anyone has any kind of queries or questions related to this topic, please feel free to put them in the YouTube comment section.
Is there any question?
Ma'am, we are waiting for a couple of minutes. If
Okay,
there
okay,
are no
fine.
questions, we would conclude.
Okay, fine.
Yes, there, ma'am. There is a question from Chamak Bhatt. Uh, the question is, what is the difference between the traditional literary representation of nature and the ecocritical approach?
Okay. See, we cannot say that the traditional literary representation of nature and eco-critical approach are different. Like, if we talk about the traditional approach, then I think you would have Wordsworth and Coleridge and all those romantic writers in your mind. So, we cannot say that these writers were traditional, so they were not eco-critical. Like, even though they have been worshipping nature, they have been praising nature, they could have the eco-critical insights. Like, what are the eco-critical insights? We try to see our connection with nature, we try to establish ourselves in nature, we try to establish ourselves in nature. So these are not actually the different ways, but we try to understand from eco-critical perspective even the traditional verses or the poems, to understand that nature has been the focus from the beginning. So these are not different approaches. I hope I am clear.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. The
Okay.
second question is from Rahul Chudasama. He is asking, how does eco-criticism differ from other literary theories?
Okay, fine. Um, See, eco-criticism, like every theory is having its focus, right? Like if we talk about feminism, then it has the concern for women. If we talk about Marxism, then it has concern for the lower class, which is there. Eco-criticism, one is having nature as its concern, and another thing is that if we try to see the theories that appeared in 1960s and 70s, they had the idea of separating text from the environment from which it has come, like from its background. We can see new criticism, that is separating text from its background. We can see formalism, that is also something centered on the text. Again, structuralism, we find the same thing happening. But eco criticism is actually bringing this text and the environment together again. Like, you cannot talk of the text without its background. So in that way too, it's different. And specifically in its focus, it is more focused on nature, but still it brings the feminist issues in the text. We find it in ecofeminism. It also talks about that exploitation of the workers when it deals with the idea of eco-Marxism. There is eco-spirituality. So it is connected, but it is different in a way that it is bringing that background into the understanding of the text back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Since there are
Fine.
no further questions, shall we conclude this session with your permission?
Yes, and I am really thankful to the Department of English, Kavi Narasimha Mehta University, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
On behalf of the members of Dr. A.K. Singh Literary Club and the Department of English, Bhaktakavi Narasimha University, Junagadh, I extend my sincere and deepest gratitude to Miss Disha Chhatbar, ma'am. I really feel that I am thanking you again for giving us your precious time On behalf of the Department of English, I am also thankful to the online audience as well who have been present in the live stream. This should not be considered as the end of this lecture series, but it serves as an inspiration to read literary aspects and optimize the upcoming summer vacation to crack NET and GSET examinations. We would soon indulge in other such academical activities through the newly activated medium of Dr. A.K. Singh Literary Club. Have a wonderful day. Let's grow and educate together. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.